Hi, welcome to the latest episode of the IoT Leaders Podcast with me, your host, Nicole, CEO of SI. Today, we're going to Northern Italy, and we're going to a small company with just over 40 employees that really is at the sharp end of innovation. And you will hear a great story about how they decided to solve a supply chain problem in electronics, and how they became the first mover in multi-IMSI, how they became the first mover in pulling together different components of the electronics boards that already exist within machines and the IoT modules and the modems into one board, and how they now are planning to bring device management to a completely another level across multiple cellular networks, across multiple different radio access types, and have basically their vision that in the future, the device controls the connectivity. It's all about the device. It really is a great case study. Francesco is a member of the company and the person who has spearheaded a lot of this innovation, and he tells the story in his own words, including a very good case study on FASI cranes, one of the world's top crane manufacturers, and what they're doing to, and what they have done to launch a crane as a service, which is a case study on our website, and it's a fascinating story that his company Microsystems did for them. So without further ado, let's get started with my podcast with Francesco from Microsystems. Francesco, welcome to the IoT Leaders Podcast.
Hello, Nick. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. And we're going to get into device management and IoT. But actually, before we do that, there's a very interesting story about the company that you work for, which is Microsystems. I know you're based in Northern Italy, and I believe that it's a family-controlled business. So maybe we could just start there. You introduce yourself and tell us a little bit on the story of Microsystems.
Yeah, I'm Francesco Melegoni, and I look after sales and marketing at Microsystems. We develop custom-built electronic boards for OEMs. So our customers are producers of professional ovens, refrigerators, floor scrubbing machines, cranes, or packaging machines. And we develop for them the electronic boards that control the functions of the machines and also the user interface. All the electronic boards are developed, custom made for them. And so we take care of the hardware and software design, and also we take care of the production of the electronic boards. So physically produced, tested, and delivered to them. And this is the company from 1984 with Microsystems. Then back in 2013, so 10 years from now, we started developing complete IoT ecosystems. We gave to this new offering a new name, a new commercial brand that is Hyperspace. And with that brand, we developed all the components of an IoT solution. So from the data gateway that take the data from the machines and send it to the cloud storage, and to the web portal or the app to interact with the system.
So maybe if I can just sort of lay that out again so that the listeners can see exactly what you just said. So you started in 84, and really, for, if I've got my maths right, about 30 years almost, the company was really just doing the controller boards for the machines. So I guess that would be controlling, not IoT, but controlling the sensors in a machine, and that board would be used, I guess, for maintenance purposes or whatever, to get diagnostics of what's going on inside the machine. Is that essentially what the controller board that you're referring to would do?
Yeah, it is correct. Our electronic boards installed in the machines of our clients are the brain of the machine and control all the different parts, all the different functions. We basically are the electronic department of our clients, because the electronic is something really complicated and they don't have the skill internally to develop. So they ask us to develop the project.
Excellent. And then you said that in 2013, you decided to go into IoT. Now, I know IoT was sort of just emerging. You could argue IoT has been around for a long time, but it really, as a industry, started to pick up about 2011. But what was the? Could you share what was the? Because I think you were personally involved in that, as I understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you championed it within the company, right? So what was the motivation for you to say, look, we can do more than just these electronic boards?
Yeah, we saw something really interesting and something with a great potential. The IoT and the IoT name didn't exist at the time. So the first board was named Remote Assistance Board. Everything was related to the remote assistance of an electronic board of a machine. But then after we realized that the IoT is a means to deliver to the final customer services, to improve the quality of how the clients work with the machine and use the machine. And we put together all the skills required to develop all the different parts, because we immediately saw that IoT was complex. And the OEMs, our clients, were struggling to dealing with many different suppliers. So one for the electronic boards, for the data gateway, another for the web portal. So we decided to take care of all the different components.
And so it's worth actually just mapping out your supply chain, which you hinted at there, because this is there's quite a few people in the supply chain. So you're making the boards, but you're selling the boards not to the end user, but to OEMs. Yeah. The OEMs are then assembling several components together, including yours. They could be then selling them on to a distributor, I guess, and then the distributor is selling them on to end users, and then ultimately the products get used by a customer, a company, an enterprise. So actually, it's quite a fragmented supply chain, and you had steered clear of the connectivity. You really were letting other people further down the chain do the connectivity, because connectivity, as I said earlier, has been around for a long time. But you were steering clear of connectivity up till that point. Is that because that you felt that you mentioned it was complicated, and therefore you really didn't think you were the right company to do the connectivity because the current solutions were too complicated?
Yeah. And we knew that the supply chain is very long. And when the supply chain is very long, you have to deliver a product that is very resilient and is very reliable from the beginning, right? Because nobody will take care of them at the end of the supply chain.
Yeah.
And so if you are in control of all the different parts of the IoT, it will be much better. You will be able to deliver a more robust solution. And into this solution, SI played a great role because we saw that the best connectivity mean was the cellular one, because the Wi-Fi is always related, is always dependent to the client.
Yeah.
If the final user don't set up the Wi-Fi properly,
Yep.
or maybe change the password or anything else, there is no more connectivity. But the cellular one is independent. And but the cellular connectivity involved the SIM cards, the SIM card parts. And in 10 years ago, we were asking, how is it possible to manage thousands of machines with thousands of SIM cards and thousands of contracts? And our clients were asking the same, and they were really scared about managing SIM cards. And their idea was to ask the final customer to put the SIM, to pay for the SIM card and to put the
push
SIM
the
card.
problem, to push the problem to the final customer. Right.
Down the line, and yeah. But this is not good, because if the final user don't do anything or don't put the SIM card, there is no connectivity, and so there is no IoT, there is no smart services, there is no remote assistance. So we found out that having a great SIM card, having a great partner for the SIM was key to success. And ISI come to us with the perfect solution to manage thousands of SIM cards. That was the API integration into web portal. So when the OEM deliver the machine to the client, the OEM activate the machine on the web portal, and automatically the web portal through API communicate with ISI and activate the SIM. Same thing. Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I could have. I carry on, and I'll make my point in a second.
No, I was just saying same thing. When the machine arrived to the end of its life, the machine has been taken out from the web portal, and the web portal automatically deactivate the SIM cards, and the customer or the OEM doesn't have to pay for the traffic. Yeah. It's
interesting that you use that date, 2013, because 2013 was when we became the first MVNO in the industry globally to offer multi-IMSI. And actually, so you were one of the first people to ask for that. And our relationship, we always do the full disclosure on these podcasts. So our relationship between the companies started in 2013, and you were one of the first customers to use the multi-IMSI facility. And it's interesting the way that you described the benefit is that not only did it it simplified things for the end user in that they didn't have to, it was built in. It simplified things for the OEM, if you go backwards in the supply chain, in that it was a simple API, activate, deactivate, suspend, or whatever type facility. And all the contract management will be done automatically in the cloud. And from your point of view, it allowed you to go into a totally new business, which is IoT connectivity. And if I recall, our very first project, I think you've already mentioned it, we always think, oh, it's always really interesting IoT use cases, but sometimes they're really common objects that are being used, common devices that are being used every day. And I think it was if I'm right, it was the floor cleaning machine was the first product that you tried it on. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. This was our first project, our first IoT project, and our first use of ISI SIM cards. And yeah, it was great because we grow a lot through this project, and we get a lot of knowledge. It was challenging at the time because we didn't have the perfect knowledge of all the components involved in the IoT ecosystem.
Yeah.
But it was a challenge that paid year after year. So, and after this project, we developed together many.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say we learn together when you're pioneers. You were a pioneer in being the, I think, right, the first company. Well, you must have been, because we'd only just released the capability and it was first in the market, but you're the first company that went from electronic boards to electronic boards, plus the IoT connectivity. And that floor cleaning project then, as you say, developed into several others. I think you mentioned it at the beginning, and I have to say that your ice cream machine is a very Italian example.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably coffee, you know, as well. But you also ovens, you said, and cranes. And I want to pick up on cranes because we've recently published a case study on our website of a company that I know you've been heavily involved in that offers cranes as a service. So FASI cranes, offering cranes as a service, which is not a phrase I don't think any of us thought we would hear. So maybe for the listeners, because this is one of the bigger, in fact, I think it's the biggest project, but certainly the biggest physical devices, we're talking cranes. Maybe you could just describe, I know you've been involved in it, the FASI project.
Yeah, we are not the producer of the electronic boards that control the cranes because it's a completely different sector and we don't have the skills for the crane control. But thanks to IoT, we enter in a customer that was not possible before. And we developed for them the data gateway that interact with the crane through the CAN bus and send the data to the cloud with an LTE module. Well, actually, in 2015, it was a 2G, 3G module. And then we developed for them the cloud storage and the web portal to manage the cranes and to interact with the cranes, to do remote assistance, and to deliver new smart services to the clients. So thanks to IoT, FASI is evolving their business, and they are moving from a product-based business to a service-based business. As you mentioned, the crane as a service is not just an optional of the crane. Is the crane itself became a new product. So the crane itself became a service rather than a product, because you can have the crane and you can use the crane and they can give you the crane because the crane is connected.
It's, you know, these case studies are always really fascinating because, and we've talked in the series that we've done, which is well over 30 of these podcasts, and it's, I would say 3/4 of them, that there always comes a point where a physical product gets redefined, and, you know, people have used the phrase, information about how the product is being used is more valuable than the product itself. And it's almost like the purpose of the original purpose of the product, in this case, the crane, picking very heavy things up and moving them, almost becomes just a feature, but it's not the primary purpose of the product. And the model, of course, changes financially from CapEx to OpEx, but actually, yes, it's still a crane and it looks like a crane, but it's interesting the way you phrased it. They don't sell it as a crane, they sell it as a managed service to provide information to the customer about what's going on in their environment. Oh, and by the way, it picks up heavy things and it moves it. Yeah. I don't know whether you can give a couple of examples of what sort of features and capabilities do FASI provide to their customers with it being now a smart device?
They provide the tracking of the crane. So the client is always aware where the crane is and where the crane have been in today, on the previous day, or in their life. And predictive maintenance is another service delivered through the IoT. So the clients know before a possible failure
before it happens.
Yeah, before alarms, when it's better to change some part of the crane and take care of some part of the crane that will probably fail in the near future. And another service is the crane as a service. So when the client buy the crane, doesn't want the crane by itself, it was the service provided by the crane. So as renting a car rather than buying a car, you need to move from A to B.
Yeah, you don't need a car. You
don't need a car. Yeah, well, the car it's a bit different because sometimes you want the car because you like the car and.
Well, I know you're based very near the Ferrari factory, so that's the second Italian thing you've just said. But yes, clearly you want, in that case, you definitely want the car in the image. But yeah, the in that one example of you said the predictive maintenance, because the three models of maintenance is the reactive, proactive, predictive. So predictive is you fix things before they go wrong, and what that will allow them then to do. It diagnose it's likely to go wrong and take a preemptive action to stop it going wrong, which basically means more productivity for the same outlay, because it will it isn't a break fix model, it's a continuous availability model enabled by the analysis of this information, which, if you compare back to what you said at the beginning of the podcast, is the boards that you design, microsystems for the controller boards for the machines, we talked about for the maintenance engineer to plug in. Well, that's a reactive process. My machine is broken. I call out the maintenance engineer arrives, plugs in into the board, and the board downloads information into a handheld device and says, oh, the fan is broken or the component is broken or whatever. But this is now taking it to a completely different level. In an ideal world, there is no need for the engineer because everything's done with proactive and preemptive software updates. And that certainly is how we see all products moving. I mean, it's a whole industry piece. So how many so this is what you're doing now. You're a medium-sized company, Northern Italy, dealing primarily with, I guess it's Italian customers because they come to you and they're all designing. There's a lot of manufacturing in that area, I know, in Northern Italy. Do you see this world of the board, the controller board, and the IoT board, which are separate? I mean, I know we talked about Costa Coffee, one of our customers. When you open the Costa Coffee machine, there's a controller unit and there's a IoT unit, which we provide, but they're separate units. Do you see those two, them always being separate units, or do you believe that ultimately they will start to merge into one?
Yeah, the architecture of IoT birthed as a separate, because it was something really new, and the data gateway that take care of the of sending the data was separate from the electronic boards, from the electronic boards that control the machine. But we don't think it's the most future-proof architecture because it's not cost efficient. If you have two different boards with two different microprocessors with a serial communication in between, you have more components that what you need. If you can integrate the IoT into the same board that control the machines, you have just one microprocessor, you have just one PCB, that is the green base for the components, and so you're more cost efficient. And we think it will be the future architecture for the IoT, because the cost of the data gateway, the cost of the electronic boards that you have to put on the machine is a factor that could slow down, that could hold back the adoption of IoT on every machine. Because a crane can afford to have 300 euros data gateway. But if you take a coffee machine, like fractional coffee machine, like 500 euros, you can't put a 10 euros, a 100 euros data gateway.
Absolutely. And the cost of the components and the physical size as well of the components is a real key factor. I would add a third one in our experience, that it's also the time to deployment if you're designing a new device, because the problem is that, and we see this a lot, because these worlds have been, I mean, this is nothing to do with SI or microsystems. The whole industry has been designing controller boards for the sensors in the machine, the electronics in the machine, and IoT connectivity modules separately. They're completely separate industries. They're completely separate companies. And you were one of the very first companies to say, let's push those two worlds together. One of the consequences of there being separate companies is that you have this serial supply chain effect. In this case, it's a design change. So people design the board without any considerations on connectivity, because that's the brief. And then someone goes out and designs the connectivity, and then they try and connect the connectivity to the board. And guess what? They find that it doesn't work, and they have to make changes on one or both sides. So then they typically go back again, and they go to both companies and they say, can you work together? And the board company doesn't know anything about connectivity, and the connectivity company doesn't know anything about board. And the point is that, and they don't have the firmware expertise inside to solve it, because a lot of it is solved through software. So the point is that often what seemed to be a 3 to 6 month project can be a 15 to 18 months project to get an initial design out. And that's because different companies with different skills having to work together. So clearly it makes a lot of sense if this functionality can be put together. And I think, and that's what you've described, is that, you know, it's cost, it's footprint, but it's also speed of innovation, getting a product out to market. And I guess that's one of the reasons why this is now becoming a really important part of your business. Yeah,
absolutely. The time to market is another great factor. And when you are just one supplier that can supply the electronic board for the machine with the connectivity integrated, you have the control on the whole system, and it's more efficient and it's more reliable also. And when the companies are two, maybe also when there is a problem, the company of the data gateway could say it's a problem on the control board, and the control board would say, and the company of the control board would say it's a problem on the data gateway. Maybe because they don't know, so they try to guess where the problem is, and if they don't see the problem on their part, they could say it's on the other board. But when you develop all the architecture, it's much more efficient. And this is our strength. And it's not so common to find companies that can take care of the IoT, but also have a great background in the electronic parts and the electronic parts of the machine.
I think there are a handful, and I would venture to suggest certainly less than 10, and maybe, well, let's just leave it. We think within an EMEA for Europe footprint, we're aware of significantly less than 10 companies that can do this right now. Although there are hundreds of companies doing the individual components.
Yeah.
Let's move on. So it's very clear what you're doing and why you're successful, and the projects that you're working on. But I want to look forward now, because I know that having been a visionary in multi-IMSI having now being a visionary in pushing the two boards together. You're also now looking at the next challenge and the whole issue of device management and making the devices even smarter. Now, that's something which we're very passionate about, and I'll come back to that. But maybe you could explain over and above just enabling connectivity, what's sort of your vision or your thoughts around how the devices themselves could be made even smarter?
It's really important that the device will be smart enough to manage the different situation, because our clients, OEMs, are selling their machine, so our IoT board, worldwide, but really worldwide, even in some remote areas. We were speaking before of Fassi, and Fassi is selling also crane to Greenland and Australia and Myanmar and many different countries. So the IoT board and the SIM cards will find a scenario, will find a country, will find a situation that is not maybe common, is not
expected.
Control, it's not expected.
Yeah.
And so it's really important that the device will be smart enough to choose the network with the best reliability, or to choose a network with a better latency, or to switch from a network that is not answering and try to move to another network, even because in a single country there are multiple networks and multiple operators. And it's really important that the device will be able to do it by itself, because when you have thousands of machines, you can't take care of each of them individually.
Yeah. And of course, as they say on TV, regular listeners will know, but yeah, regular listeners will to the podcast, or if you know SI, will know that we absolutely share this vision. And in fact, we did a podcast, the last one I recorded, with a company in North America, American Pharma, who completely different business to you. They provide monitoring devices for vaccines, human tissue, blood, and embryos. But they almost word for word described the future as you just described it. You know, the device has to choose its own connectivity. The device has to make choices based on more granular circumstances like network latency, signal strength. And also, in the case of an outage, the device has to do it on itself. The device has to be self-sufficient and intelligent to be able to take action without having to wait for the cloud, because if you don't have connectivity, you can't communicate to the cloud. The device just sits there and waits. And our Smart Connect product, which they talked about on the podcast, he talked about the fact that it had increased the device resiliency by 85%, which if you're monitoring human embryos is literally a life or death benefit, because of the temperature fluctuations can harm the embryos. And I think that your vision, you know, to me, this is the third area where you're looking to be first mover. You know, you have the multi-IMSI, you have the blending of the boards, but and I know you're in evaluations on Smart Connect. We can't talk about that publicly on the podcast as to how it's going, but you are evaluating Smart Connect now, and the ability to actually have the device choose the connectivity, have the device be intelligent on its own, and even, you know, multi-RAT, because, you know, cellular is only 13% of all the connectivity worldwide. There's a lot of other technologies out there like LoRa. You mentioned Wi-Fi being not reliable, which a lot of people say, but sometimes if it's available, it's very reliable and it's free. And so this idea of saying, well, what is available around me? What can I use? But if it's not available, then use this. And it could be a technical parameter like latency or signal strength. It could be a RAT type, which is here's my priority order, Bluetooth first, LoRa second, in the future, release 17 satellite, so that I could get, Greenland, what did you say, Myanmar, Australia, and whatever, the answer to those countries and large swathes of the planet will be satellite. And that which requires new firmware to be loaded in the device so we can use the cellular modem. So there's just, or it could be price, use free networks first and only paid networks if the free networks aren't there. So our vision, which we know you share, is ultimately we've gone through a phase where, as you said, in 2013, the control moved from the operator to the MVNO. And in this case with you, it was us. And now we're into EUICC and eSIMs, but we are clearly getting to a phase where the eSIM becomes the iSIM, so it goes down to the silicon, which makes the device cheaper and smaller. But after it doesn't stop at the iSIM, because then what happens is the device, the rules engine, the logic, if you like, the software, the control, the device management starts becoming device resident. And that then really turbocharges things, because then you can offer very differentiated consumer experiences to your OEMs.
Yeah, absolutely. And this where ISI become to us not just a supplier of SIM cards, but a company that can lead us into the real innovation, because through Smart Connect, we will be able to have a much better and much more resilience and much robust connectivity. And we will be able to transfer this reliability to our OEMs. Right. And this is thanks to ISI that lead us into this new technology.
So thank you for saying that. I think it's just a very exciting industry. I mean, I think we both do. You decided to spearhead. As I said, I know it's a family-owned company, and you said, look, we've got to get into this. And they said, okay, give it a go. And now you've built this business. So congratulations. And now you have this vision for where it's going to go next. And I think that the reason people listen to this podcast is that they share, they're curious, but they also share the enthusiasm. I think we all do in the industry about where it can go, because the promise for society and what we can do by turning products into services is so huge. It is so, I've said before, it was one thing, the first wave of the internet changed everything, but really it changed everything through people's interface with machines, with computers. Now what we're talking about is people's interface with things, or actually and things talking to things, but that has so much potential. And we've really only scratching the surface so far. So I think you're positioned as a company, you're positioned in a very nice space. And there's a lot of things happening right now in the industry that are enabling new capabilities. And it's great to be able to talk to a company that has had the ambition and the courage actually to say, no, we're going to be at the forefront of this. And so I applaud you for what you've done and some of your case studies. And I would encourage people. I mean, this is about microsystems, not SI. But if you want to read more about that FASI case study, it's on our website. You can search for FASI, search for Cranes case studies or whatever, because it really is a great example. I think it definitely holds the record for the biggest thing that we've ever smart enabled. Although I'm sure the record will be beaten. But it's certainly the biggest. Sometimes we deal with little tiny products and we look at battery life management, but the cranes
are huge. Yeah,
the cranes are pretty big and pretty heavy. Listen, Francesco, I think it's a great story, and it's not like a big company with tens of millions of dollars of research budget and 1,000 people in the IT department. You've done this as a family company in northern Italy.
Yeah. It's a family business. We are 42 people and 13 software engineer. So with 6 million of revenues per year. So we are a small size company also in Italy. But when you have a good attitude and the good skills and the good people and the good team, you can do something. You can take the innovation and take it to the market. And at the end, it's all about improving the quality of people and the quality of how they work and how they use the machine. And the final target is to have more intelligent machines and making the technology almost disappearing, because you just see the result, you see something that works really well. And yeah.
The ultimate measure of perfect technology is when it becomes invisible and you don't know it's there. And you said that so well. I think that we should leave it there. Thanks very much for being on the podcast, and I'm sure you've inspired a lot of people listening to this to come down the IoT road, which is all we're really trying to do with this series. So Francesco, thanks for being an SI customer. Congratulations on your innovation, and thanks for being on the IoT Leaders podcast today.
Thank you, Nick. It's been a pleasure, and thanks for having me.
Okay. Thanks and ciao. Ciao.
Thank you. Ciao.